Welcome everyone to the second in our Why Emerge series, where we interview alums of the Emerge Kentucky program and other women who are connected to our incredible network of over 251 women who have graduated the program. My name is Gretchen Hunt, and I am so honored to be the executive director here at Emerge Kentucky. Our mission, if you don't know already, is to increase the number of women from diverse backgrounds in Kentucky serving in office. And so it is my absolute joy today to invite Councilwoman-Elect Cassie Chambers Armstrong. And Cassie, before I begin, I just want to invite all of our viewers and know that from your Emerge family, we want to wish you a happy birthday. Today is a big day, so thank you for spending that day with us. Before I begin to talk to you a little bit more about your Emerge journey, give us a little bit of a sense of your background and who you are.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for the birthday wishes. There is nowhere that I would rather be and no cause I would rather be sort of talking about on my birthday than this program that has made such an impact for me personally and for so many women that I know. I think it's sort of put forward so many leaders that are making a difference in our city and our state. So I truly, truly believe in Emerge and the cause and getting more women in elected office. So I grew up in rural Kentucky, very poor, I always tell the story of how when I was born, my parents brought me home to a trailer that they couldn't afford to run the air conditioner in. But I was lucky I had a very strong and supportive family, a very strong and supportive community. And because of the opportunities that my community gave to me and the foundation they gave me, I was able to have some incredible educational opportunities. I earned a scholarship to Yale College. I graduated from Harvard Law School. And my community also instilled in me the importance of giving back. And so after I graduated from Harvard Law School, I returned to Kentucky, made my home in Louisville, and began working with low-income women who had experienced domestic violence through the Legal Aid Society. And so I see all of that as sort of a natural background into entering public service and entering public life, because I believe that when your community gives you opportunities, you have a responsibility to try to pay those opportunities forward to create similar opportunities for others.
Super. So in addition to being an attorney and also a published author, tell us a little bit about your book and how you balance all these things. You're also the mom of one and you're expecting your second. So tell us a little bit more about all those different things and how they interact together.
Yeah, I think, I like to stay very busy, and I like to stay busy with different types of activities. I wrote a book about growing up in Eastern Kentucky called Hill Women, and it talks specifically about the women in my life that sort of elevated me and gave me that foundation that allowed me to have all of those opportunities. My grandmother had a third grade education and lived in a house that was so cold that her blankets froze every single night. And my mom was the sixth of seven kids and the first to have an opportunity to graduate high school and go on to Berea College. And so the book talks about this idea. I think often we want to talk about how change and transformative change and this pull yourself up by your bootstraps narrative, we act as though it should be something instantaneous that everyone should be able to do by themselves. But Hill Women, I really tried to take sort of a longitudinal approach and a generational approach and talk about how that type of change, it takes families and it takes a whole community and it takes women after women, just generations really working to make it happen.
So tell us about, so you went to undergrad at Yale and you went to Harvard Law School. So no small feats for someone growing up in Eastern Kentucky, really the second in your family to go on to college, second generation. Talk to us about why you decided to return back to Kentucky. Because I think that we see in our state, we have incredible women across the state, from east to west, from southeast regions, and of course, Louisville, Lexington, Frankfort, Northern Kentucky, who stay in those urban areas. And then particularly, we have people who leave the state. So the idea of brain drain is very, very real in this state, but you came back. So talk to us about what was your motivation to coming back to Kentucky?
Yeah. Well, there was never any question in my mind that I would return home to Kentucky because it is home and it's where family is. I think for me personally, it really does come down to that idea that this is the community, these are the people, this is the state that really gave me all the opportunities that I had. and that I continue to have. And I think that there are fewer people, Kentucky does face real and significant challenges. We have seen that with the coronavirus. We have seen that in the calls for increased racial justice and equity in communities throughout our state. And there's a lot of work to be done here. And I think sometimes we define success in states like Kentucky as having the opportunity to leave. And I don't think it's a bad thing to leave and to go experience other things in the world and to learn and to bring the lessons you learn back to our state. But I think it's so important to have people committed to making a change here. And when I looked around and I thought about where can I really make a difference in the world, I felt like I had a unique experience and a unique perspective and unique skills to bring back to this state.
Super. And you've talked to us about how you came back as an attorney representing survivors of domestic violence. Tell us about, you talk in your book and elsewhere about a particular case that you worked on that really went from representing an individual woman to then work in the legislature. And talk to us about that transformation in your own vision of how you could impact systems.
Sure. So I think when I started off working at the Legal Aid Society, I was very committed to this idea of making a difference one client at a time, one survivor at a time. But the more I did the work, the more I realized that you see the same sorts of issues coming up time and time again. And really what you need is policy change. One of the stories that affected me most profoundly was the case of Jeanette. And Jeanette was a client of mine who had experienced horrific abuse at the hands of her spouse for years. And one night, her spouse came home and assaulted her. He fled, cleaned out their bank account. She had no money. And he was eventually apprehended and placed in jail and faced criminal charges for the assault. And Jeanette made that difficult decision to divorce him and to start her life anew. And she was excited to sort of have that separation and be able to start a new life. However, she realized through the divorce proceedings that not only did her husband have a right to have an attorney represent him in the divorce, even though she did not, she actually had to pay for that attorney for him. And although I was representing her for free at the Legal Aid Society because she couldn't afford an attorney, she was required by the law to come up with the funds to pay for him to have representation. And it just made her feel re-victimized all over again, like the system was set up not to work for her, but to work for him and to make his needs more important than hers. And it was something that I had seen before, but this time it really stuck with me, seeing how profoundly it impacted her. So Jeanette and I decided together to change the law. And it started off with her giving me permission to tell her story. And then as sort of I started to tell it and it started to get attention and there was talk of we should really create a policy fix for this, Jeanette said, you know what? I can tell this story myself. This is my story, and I'm willing to do that difficult thing and go out there and talk about one of the most traumatic experiences of my life and share it with the world because I think it will help people. And seeing her tell her story to the Kentucky General Assembly and seeing the way that made this bill to change the law just unstoppable. It was such a reminder that individual stories matter. The stories that we tell in our society matter, and it's how policy change happens. And so from that experience, it's a good reminder that when we want to change big things and we want to change big systems, it starts with finding someone who can really talk about what the problem is and really drive home that personal point.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's such a powerful story, not just about your own advocacy, but in you lifting others as you rise. So just really centering the survivor and allowing her to have such an active role in changing the law. So you were doing legal advocacy, you were doing legislative advocacy. What made you decide to look at running for office and doing Emerge? And how did you find out about Emerge? How did you choose that program?
I had always been interested in policy and in government. And I think too often women think, oh, if I'm interested in policy and government, I'll work behind the scenes on these issues, and I'm not going to be the one to put my face forward. Um, and as I sort of, got involved in policy, government, politics, I kept running into these amazing female leaders in Louisville and throughout the state. And the thing they all had in common was that they had gone through Emerge Kentucky. And they all sort of carried the same message. We need more women in elected office. And this program, it changed my life. It made it possible for me to pursue my goals of making change in society. And it taught me how to do that through political processes. And so I was intrigued, and I looked into learning more. And the more I learned, the more I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. I believe that politics can be a force for good. I think it's something that we increasingly feel sort of defeated about in society today. But at the end of the day, running for office, it's how our democracy works. It's how we get good decision makers. It's how we get big transformative change. And so I sort of applied and I got accepted. And I have been grateful for that decision ever since.
And you have been such a friend to the program. I know that you mentor other women who have gone through the program. You've assisted in interviews and been a very active alumna. Meanwhile, balancing that with a number of things. You serve as the vice chair of the Kentucky Democratic Party, in addition to the roles that we have talked about. So you have many balls up in the air. So talk to us about when you decided to run for office, the office you chose, your thinking around that, and then what were some of the skills that you took away from Emerge that helped you in your campaign?
Yeah, so I decided to run for local government office, Metro Council here in Louisville. I really believe that the best thing you can do in your life in terms of, dedicating yourself to a noble cause and to a worthy cause is working to make your community better. This is, I have a 15-month-old child. This is the community that he is going to grow up in. The problems in this community are the problems that he will face every day, and the problems that I face every day, the problems my neighbors face every day. And I believe that you can have a tangible impact on those problems through local government. I believe that it's sort of the place where your connection to your neighbors and to your constituents is the strongest. And I think we've seen in recent days, with all of the talk of needed reforms in Louisville and ways to make our city more equitable and more just, you could see that local government is certainly a powerful force. It can be a powerful force for change, and it has such a profound impact on people's lives. And so I am really honored to have the chance to work with my neighbors and work with my immediate community to try to make our community better, because I think we've seen we have a long way to go, and we have a lot of issues that we need to work on to address together. Emerge, I would not have known how to start running for office were it not for Emerge. I think, you think about running for office, and how do you even begin to talk to thousands of people, and how do you even begin to launch a campaign, and what does a successful campaign even look like? And Emerge really gave me the backbone for understanding what a campaign looks like, sort of that framework to know what it even means to talk about running for office. And I will say also the network was incredibly helpful. When I decided to run, I had so many Emerge sisters step up and offer to help in all sorts of ways. And so my campaign would not have been possible without Emerge Kentucky.
Super. And you had a tough fought primary. You were victorious in the primary, and you are the Councilwoman-Elect because you're unopposed on the ballot for November. You also campaigned in the midst of a pandemic. So talk to us about some of the creative ways that you campaigned to overcome those challenges and really address the immediate needs of your community. You've talked about that local leadership role being so key.
Yeah, I think when your community is hurting and you're asking for the chance to be a leader in that community, I think you have to recenter your campaign so that it's not about you. It's not about any of your dreams or aspirations or anything like that. It's about how you can be of service to your community. And that's really, when things started happening with the coronavirus pandemic and the calls for racial justice, we really took a step back and we thought, how can we actually do something good and contribute something to our community right now? How can we sort of show that, that we can be the right type of leader in this community and that we can actually make a difference? And so a lot of it was everything from calling people just to provide them with information. This is how you vote this year. Do you have any questions about voting? To compiling resource lists. These are all of the ways that if you're a small business, you can get assistance. This is where information is coming out of. Hey, if you're a parent with young kids, here's a list of 25 different activities that you could try with those kids that are virtual. And just really making sure that we were being a source of pushing out valuable resources to people and offering help and offering assistance and being communicative with the community. And that was sort of our approach. And I think it allowed me to actually create really meaningful relationships that I'm going to carry with me into my role as a Metro Council person.
Well, you've done such a phenomenal job with that. It's been easy to track and to follow your campaign and your advocacy. And I'd like to return just to something that you brought up, which is the sort of dual pandemics, the dual crises impacting our nation, our community, our state, our local community, of both the pandemic, which is unprecedented, and the national reckoning and local reckoning on racial injustice. And one of the things I know that you have done is you are going to be the councilwoman in the Highlands, part of Louisville, which is, has mixed income, but is also a community with a fair amount of power and privilege. You've also made really intentional relationships and partnerships with communities like the Russell neighborhood in the west end of Louisville. So talk to us about that and kind of how a local council person in Louisville, what is the relationship with the rest of Louisville? You represent your constituency, but how do you see your role impacting the whole city?
Yeah, so the Highlands, it is a community. It's 97% white. It is significantly above the average income in the city. It's, like you said, a community that has a lot of privilege and a lot of resources. And it's also a community that's really committed to using those to create a more just and equitable city, and to be able to sort of move us all forward. And so one of the things that I've been doing is, I recognize that my voice should not be the loudest on these issues, that we should really be lifting up leaders from the Black community and from the communities most impacted by these problems. And that my job is to go and find those leaders and ask them just to tell me what I can do to be a good ally and to be a good support, and how my community can get involved in creating a meaningful partnership as we work towards change together. And so I'm having those conversations now, and we're starting the process of sort of formalizing a racial justice, racial equity task force here in the Highlands to really make sure that we're engaging our community in meaningful ways, and helping both forming those relationships that are so important to making sure that we get sustainable, long-lasting change, and also just pushing to advocate for policy change. I think that one thing we do too often is we think of our city as a series of artificial lines on maps, and each council district thinks of itself as autonomous unto itself. And I think, if anything, we have seen that we are really all in this together, and that our city only progresses if we all progress, and if we really begin to create a city that is more just, more fair, more equitable for every member of our community.
Thank you for sharing that. So we've talked a lot about Louisville, where you will serve in elected office. If you were to talk to women who are in Eastern Kentucky or in other rural communities across the state, because you really do have a bicultural identity in terms of having lived in a lot of different worlds and having straddled those, as you talk about in your book, what would you say to women in those communities who are thinking, do I run? How do I get involved? How does that look different in a rural area and rural communities in East Kentucky and West Kentucky and other parts of the state? What advice would you get if you were talking to women in those communities right now about running for office or stepping up into places of power?
Yeah, we need you. First off, we need women in rural communities to step forward and put their name on the ballot. My book, Hill Women, is all about strong rural Kentucky women, and I know, because I have lived it, that women have exercised power in a lot of ways in Eastern Kentucky that have gone unrecognized. And historically, a lot of that has been more sort of private sphere focus, more sort of behind the scenes. And increasingly, we see these strong Kentucky women, strong mountain women, strong hill women stepping forward and taking on these public leadership roles, and the way that their communities sort of thrive when they do that. And so I still think that we don't have as many women in rural areas stepping forward as we do women in urban areas. And I think it's really sort of the next phase of moving towards sort of parity and representation and all of those things, is to have more rural women stepping forward. So, there are unique challenges to running rural campaigns, but there are plenty of great Emerge women who have done it and have done it successfully. And I know that whatever community women who are out there watching are in, they will find amazing role models and amazing Emerge alums close by that will be more than willing to roll up their sleeves and lend a hand and make sure that they can be successful.
Super. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about, we have several Emerge alums who've really been trailblazers in a lot of ways. One of whom is, I know, a dear friend to you, Representative Josie Raymond, who was the first sitting legislator to give birth while in office and pushed for a number of gender-based policy changes, including, using campaign funds to be able to pay for childcare, and really visually showing both the realities and the challenges and the importance of centering working moms who are in office. You too have followed in that path and are doing that. So talk a little bit about running for office while being a mom, looking forward to governing while being a mom, and what you would say to other women who are moms out there, children of all ages, but in particular, moms of small kids, of little kids and babies. What are some advice or tips that you would give them, or just thoughts to consider?
Yeah, so Josie and I, we have this conversation a lot because we really believe in this idea that we've sort of dubbed public mothering, which is this idea that motherhood should be a source of political strength and political identity, and a way to sort of bring moms together to use our mom identity for policy change, as opposed to something that makes us think that we don't belong in public office or an elected office. And so, I think running for office with kids is challenging, with little kids. But I think one of the things that you have to look at is the way that we have basically created a political system that has shut this entire demographic out of office. We actually, only 6% of our Congress is moms with teenagers or younger in the household, despite the fact that 41% of households in America have kids under 18 in them. We don't see the same effect happening for men as we do for women. We have more former prosecutors and people born outside of America and elected to Congress right now than we do women with teenagers or younger. And so we've created a system where this group, when we talk about supporting working families and we talk about the needs of working families, we're talking about working moms. I mean, we're talking about women who are trying to balance these concerns that we're trying to address in our society of, getting a good education for their kids, struggling to save for retirement, having bills. These are the concerns that our government is supposed to be working on. And this group that's really experiencing them most viscerally has been shut out of our elected political systems. And so if you're a mom with young kids, you can do it. Society, we say it takes a village to raise a child. Bring your child into that village, lead as a mom, lean into your identity as a mother. And I believe that it is good for our society to see, and that it creates good policy. It's good to have people that are experiencing some of the most pressing issues of our society be the decision makers at the tables that are talking about those issues.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So when you look at what's up, January and on, what are a few of the issues that you are most interested in focusing on for the city of Louisville and your role as councilwoman?
Yeah, it's such a rapidly changing world right now. I will say, I think we are facing things that we just don't know how the coronavirus pandemic or how sort of the path forward towards racial justice is going to look in even a few weeks from now, let alone a few months from now. But I'm very interested in focusing on how we as a city begin to support our small businesses, many of whom have been really devastated by the coronavirus pandemic. How we truly invest in equitable infrastructure and invest in equity in our city, what that means to think about our budget as a moral document, and what it means to shift funds to reflect our priorities in moving our city forward. I'm really interested in talking about equitable access to green space and to our parks. I think we've seen in the pandemic that that's so important, that all neighborhoods have access to our park system and to outdoor spaces. And so I'm very open to, listening to both my immediate community and my district, and also to the city, and really hearing what the needs are come January, and then working creatively and collaboratively with people to address those through policy.
Well, you will no doubt make a lot of incredible change in the city here in Louisville and across the state. Our applications are open for the new 2021 Emerge class. So we hope to have women from across the state filing to apply for those for the 2021 class, which will train them with the skills they need to run for office. As you know, it's a 6-month program, 70 hours. We, as everybody in the world, are pivoting to deliver a lot of that content virtually, but also to work on building that network. So any last thoughts that you would like to share about making that pitch to folks, that why now? Why emerge right now? Why in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, when it may be a little bit different, when things are very challenging? Why is now so urgent to have women getting trained to run for office?
We are facing big challenges. We need good leaders. We need more women in office, and Emerge is the best program that I know of to prepare women to sort of make that leap to become leaders in their community. And we desperately need leadership right now at all levels of government. So women, if you're out there watching, I hope that you will apply. I know that it can seem sort of like a scary thing to undertake as a commitment, but you will not regret it. It will change your life, and you will make an amazing network of women friends, women sisters along the way. And so I am so, so grateful that I had the opportunity to participate in Emerge Kentucky.
Well, Cassie, thank you so much for spending your birthday with us. We're going to close it out with just a few last steps of how folks can learn more about Emerge, support Emerge, and find out more about our 2021 class. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So there are a number of ways that you can continue to be involved in the Emerge Kentucky community. Definitely follow us on Facebook. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. We will have upcoming series of more interviews with our Emerge alum and other women who have been so intimately connected to the history of Emerge on Facebook. We will also be hosting 2 information sessions with more details about the training program. And lastly, I think that the world right now is so aware of how we need more women in office. And so if you consider becoming a monthly sustainer of Emerge, that empowers incredible women like Councilwoman-Elect Cassie Chambers Armstrong, who make impacts that will resonate for decades in Kentucky. So thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you in the future. And thank you again, Cassie.
Thank you.